So, Pearl was directed by Ty West, it stars Mia Goth, and it was co-written by the both of them. And it's a prequel to the movie X, which came out earlier this year, and it's about the villain from that movie who, when she was younger, she lived with her family. Her mother was very strict, her father was very ill, and she's basically forced to live this life, and she finds ways to get out of that life. That's basically to say the least of it, because a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie is very disturbing. So I honestly was not looking forward to this movie, even though it was done by A24, even though I enjoyed the movie X for the most parts. I was not looking forward to this movie because I didn't know how this movie would play out and how it would connect to the trilogy overall. I just went in it completely blind, and I'm glad I did, because this is one of the... This movie is better than X, I will say that. I think I really enjoyed this movie for the most parts. There are some things I don't like, but we'll get to it. So what works in this movie? First off, Mia Goth. She is incredible in this movie. She was good in X. Here, she's great. I was disturbed by her. I felt bad for her. She has a monologue at one point that is just 6 minutes long, and the camera doesn't cut away from her at all. It was heartbreaking and terrifying all at the same time. That's the best way to describe this movie. It's both heartbreaking and terrifying, which is a weird combo for a movie, but for this movie, it works. Other actors that do a good job, Tandy Wright in this movie, she plays Pearl's mother. She was very scary in this movie. I thought she did a really good job. David Cornsweet, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He's kind of the love interest of Pearl in this movie, but not really at the same time. You'll see the movie and you'll understand. I thought he did a good job, too, for his parts. Also, I really dug the cinematography of this movie. Like, the score is also really well done as well. Like, back to the cinematography, it's mostly during the daytime, which is an interesting contrast to X, which was mostly during the nighttime. That I thought was really good, and it kind of felt like it was like a bright and colorful movie, despite some of the things that happen in that movie. The score I thought was really good. It felt like it evoked the time period of those older movies, like from that time period. And I also really dug a lot of the themes in this movie as well. I dug themes of, like, isolation, letting your years go by and not really taking advantage of your time, reaching for fame. I thought that was very interesting, kind of how it plays back into X a bit. It was also interesting to kind of see like how it does kind of play back with X, because I rewatched X after I saw Pearl, and I didn't enjoy it as much, maybe because I think I enjoyed Pearl way too much. But it's definitely interesting to like look back at X and Pearl, and I'm kind of interested what they'll do with Maxine now, to see how all three of these movies kind of connect. But I also really like the references to older movies. Like the main one you'll see is Wizard of Oz, which I thought that was kind of interesting. It takes those references to really disturbing places. I wouldn't have imagined they would ever do that, but I like those. It's hard to say I like those references, but I like the homages, I would say, even though they take it in a way that's like not age appropriate. Also, I really like the disturbing final shot in this movie. It kind of sealed the movie for me. It was both horrifying and heartbreaking at the same time. Again, that's kind of the main theme of this movie. It honestly does kind of play out like a tragedy, which I thought that was an interesting angle. And I feel like a lot of people are not talking about it. It feels like a tragedy, honestly. It feels like you feel bad for this person, but at the same time, you are aware that this person is doing really messed up things throughout the entire movie. And there's a point in this movie where I'm just like, should I feel bad? Should I feel bad? And again, I think Mia Goth walks that line perfectly, where it's like, you do want to feel bad for her, but at the same time, you think this person should, belong in an institution or something. So, what doesn't really work in this movie? I mentioned that when I saw this movie, I watched X again afterwards to kind of connect the two. And honestly, the Pearl honestly stands on its own. And I think that's a problem. It just doesn't really connect to X in any way. There's like a few references, like, oh, you gotta have that X factor, which was a line from the first movie. And there's a line in X that Brittany Snow said where it's like, don't blame me for your years going by or whatever. Other than that, it just felt like it didn't really need to connect to X. I felt like it was just perfect being on its own. Also, I didn't think a lot of the kills are that interesting. I don't know if it's because the time period, you can't really show a lot of the kills from movies of that era, because a lot of the deaths are actually off screen. maybe it's because of that, because it's like they're trying to evoke that time period. It's like, oh, we can't really show it, so we're going to imply it a lot more. And some of them, I just didn't think were even that interesting to begin with. I won't go into detail or anything, but honestly, even though those are my only problems with the movie, I still thought this was a fascinating character study. I thought it was very well done. Mia Goth was incredible in the movie. It looks great. It sounds great. It's horrifying. It's beautiful at the same time. It's just one of those weird. It's one of those weird conundrums of a movie where it's like you do feel bad and you do feel bad, but you also feel horrified at the same time. And I really dug it for that reason. Pearl, I'm gonna give Pearl 3.5 out of 4 stars. See it. So, what is the last horror movie that really surprised you? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.